We continue now at the top of Daf Chof Beis Amud Aleph and Meseches Bava Metzia. This is Bava Metzia Daf 22a. The Gemara is in the middle of bringing a proof from a Brisa to the issue of Yish Shalom Midas. The beginning of the Brisa talked about a Ganav or a Gazlan who take from one individual and give to another individual. V'chein Yarden, and similarly the Yarden, the Jordan River, Shenatal Mizeh v'Nasan Lazeh, if it takes from this individual and gives to another individual. The halacha is Masha Natal, and Masha Nasan, Nasan, whatever was taken, and whatever was given was given. Essentially, there's a transfer of ownership in this situation. And Rashi explains Yarden v'chein Shar Nahar, so it doesn't have to be the Yarden, it could be any river. V'tana zal Yad HaYarden Haya Yoshev. This Tana was sitting by the side of the Yarden, so the Yarden was chosen as the example. In any case, you have over here a transfer of ownership because a Gazlan, let's say, or the Yarden took from one individual and gave to another. And so the Gemara now brings its proof. Bishlama Gazlan v'Yarden. I understand how this works if it's a Gazlan. A Gazlan is a robber that steals outright, right in front of the person, or the Yarden, same idea, because the person sees exactly what's happening, and he gives up hope, so essentially he renders the item ownerless, and now it has a new owner. Elagana, but when it comes to a Ganav is a thief. That's somebody who steals something in secret and hiding, so the person never even knew. Did he see what happened that he would give up hope? It seems to be a case of Yish Shalom Midas. He's not aware that it was taken, and Yish Shalom Midas apparently is considered to be Yish. And the Gemara says, Tir Gemara Papa. The Gemara says, Rapapa answers, according to the one who says that Yish Shalom Midas is not Yish. The reason why it's working over here is we're not talking about a standard Ganav. Rather, we're talking Ballistim Mizuyan. We're talking about armed bandits. And so they're doing it right in front of the person. As Rashi explains, Ballistim Mizuyan, Uvechazaka not lahaimenu. They took it by force. Umeikara Yado Miyayish. He knew from the outset, he knew what happened, and he gave up hope, he despaired. And so that's why we're not talking about a regular Ganav. The Gemara says, Yachi, if so, Hainu Gazlan. Well, that's the same as a Gazlan. That means the Ganav and Gazlan in this price are the same. And the Gemara says, Trei Gafnei Gazlan. The Gemara says there are two types of Gazlan. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here a proof from the following brisa: Shataf Nahar Korav Eitzav Yavonav. If the river sweeps away a person's beams or his wood or his stones, V'nasnu B'soch Sadech Haver, and places them inside the field of his friend, Hareilu Shalo, it belongs to him, it belongs to the other individual, that second individual, Mipnei Shenesi Aishwa Bailim, because there's Yish Bailim, again because the owner has despaired. And so the Gemara says, Taima Dinesi Aishu HaBailim, the only reason why it's considered to be Yish is because the owner has despaired. Hastama, but in a normal situation, meaning to say, let's say we don't know that the owner has despaired, so then we would not say that it's considered Yish, meaning it sounds like the Brisa is saying, Yish Shalom Midas is not considered Yish, like Abaya, and a question on Rava. Rashi explains, Hareelu Shalom Ibnei Shenesi Aishu HaBailim. Again, this is considered to be his because the owner is despaired. The Chol Shtifas Nahar Kekoros Eitzim Va'avonim HaBailim Yaduba. The point over here is that when the river takes away a person's beams or wood or stone, that the owner knows about, miyad, he knows about that right away. To Yesh Lakol, there the word goes out, the person is aware, and so there we know there is Yesh. Hastama, but in a case min hastam, meaning to say in a standard case of an item which you don't know about. Ha'im Haisa Aveda Acheres, let's say it was another lost object, She'ein Lanu Lomar Sheyadu HaBailim, that we can't say that the owners know. Lo Havashel Motza, then the person who finds it is not allowed to keep it. Sounds like Yish Shalom Midas is not Yish, and Kasha L'Rava, this is a difficulty on Rava. And the Gemara answers, Hacha b'mayaskin, on here in this brisa, what are we dealing with? Keshayachol lahatzil, the case over here is, he's actually able to save the items. And Rashi explains, Keshayachol lahatzil is able to save the items, as the Gemara will go on to say, he's able to save them, but he does not save them. That shows that he's miyayish, that shows that he's given up hope. And then you can compare the case to a situation of some other item that is found. That would be davar sheyesh bo siman. That would be something that has a siman, and therefore, again, it's a situation where he can save it, so to speak, by giving over the siman. The yachol litain siman, the owner is able to say what the distinguishing mark is, velitol, and to take back his item, and so they're modina bad the chayiv lahachzer. There, the brisa would admit that the person is chayiv to return the lost item, and so therefore we can understand this brisa has nothing to do with Yish Shalom Midas. But the Gemara continues, if so, let's look at the end of the very same brisa. It says, if the owners are chasing after the beams or the wood or the stone, chayiv lahachzer, so then you are chayiv to return the items to the original owner. So the Gemara says, if the brisa is talking about a case where the owner is able to save it, why does he have to be chasing after the item? Even if he's not chasing after the item, don't they just rely on the fact that it's going to be returned because it's something that can be saved? And so the Gemara clarifies, and here what are we talking about? We're talking about a situation where the owner is able to save the beams or the wood or the stones, but it is a difficult thing to save them. And so therefore we have to evaluate whether he's despaired or not. Miradfin, if he's chasing after it, lo yayish, then he has not despaired. Ein miradfin ayushem yayish, but if he's not chasing after it, if they're not chasing after it, then he has despaired, and that's what's going on in this price. And again, therefore it's not going to be a proof to a situation of yish shalom midas. Rashi explains, afilu ein miradfin nami. Again, if it's something that's able to be saved, even if they're not chasing after it, it should be the same. The samchia hatzal delamacher, they're relying on the fact that the next day they'll be able to save it, or a different day they'll be able to save it. And again, they're not giving up hope. And so the Gemara said, well, the case is very specific. Al yedei hadachak. The case is that they're able to save it, but it's a difficult thing to do. If they don't do it quickly right now, they won't save it. Hilkach, therefore, ein miradfin, if they're not chasing after it, afkure afkrinu, then they are rendering it ownerless to hayadu v'lo hitzilu, because they knew about it and they didn't save it. And again, that's why, since the brisa is this specific scenario, it's not a proof to the issue of yiyah shalom midas. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here, another proof from a brisa. Keitzad amru hatorim shalom midas truma so truma. When do we say that if someone takes off truma for somebody else, meaning on someone else's property, he takes off truma without the owner's knowledge that it's a good truma? The brisa gives the example as follows: Haresha yard l'soch sadach haver. If a person goes down into the field of his friend, v'liket v'tarim shalom brishos, he collects and takes off truma without permission from the owner. Im choshesh mishum gezel. If there's a concern that he's stealing, ain't truma so the truma that he separated is not truma. But if not, if there's no concern of theft, so the truma that he separated is a good truma. And the Gemara clarifies, the Brisa clarifies, how do we know if there's a concern of theft or not? If the owner of the field came and he found him and he saw what he was doing, he said to him, go to the good produce. I want you to separate the truma from the good produce. If it turns out that what he separated was from the good produce, exactly like the owner of the field said, truma, so then it's going to be a good truma. Essentially, you see that the owner of the field is agreeing to what he's doing. And if not, ain't truma, then what he separated as truma is not truma. And the Brisa continues, liktu habaylim v'hosifu alei. And now, if the owners, if they collected together and added on to what was being, they added on to the truma that was being separated, meaning essentially the owner participated together with this person, so then the owner is showing that he agrees with what is happening. Bein kach uvein kach truma, so truma, then in all situations, it's going to be a good truma. And so the Gemara now brings its proof from the Brisa. It says over here that if we find that he actually took from the good produce of the field, and that's what the owner said he wanted, then that's considered to be a good truma. And so the Gemara says, why is it a good truma? At the time that he was actually taking off the truma, we only found out later that he agrees to what was being separated, but at the time that he's actually separating the truma, the owner had no idea, and therefore it's kind of like yiyah shalom midas. Here it's separating truma shalom midas, and we're basically saying just like yiyah shalom midas is yish, it sounds like rava, it sounds like we're saying just like yiyah shalom midas is yish, so too when he separates, if we find out later that the owner really agreed, we can say retroactively, so to speak, all along, he really would agreed, he really would have agreed, and therefore the truma that he separates, shalom midas, is considered to be a good truma. This is essentially a proof for Rava that Yish Shalom Midas is Yish. And so the Gemara says, Tirgama Rava Aliba de Abaya. Rava answers the question on behalf of Abaya that the case over here actually is the Shavya Shliach. The case over here is that the owner actually appointed this person as Shliach. And the Gemara explains, Hachanam Mistabra, makes sense to say this. If you think that this person wasn't actually appointed a shliach, truma, do you really think the truma could possibly be truma? The pasuk says atem, and then it says also you. It says the word gam. We darshan from there, l'rabo shluchachim. That's where we learn to include the concept of a shliach, and we apply that by truma, and we understand that to mean ma'atem l'daitchem. Just like when you do it, it's with your knowledge, obviously. Av shluchachem l'daitchem. So too, when your agent does it, it has to be with your knowledge, and so therefore it has to be the case is rather, what are we dealing with in this brisa where the owner actually appointed this person as a shliach? And the case, what the brisa means is as follows. He tells the person, go and take off truma. And he doesn't say take off from this particular produce. Now in general, most owners of a field, they take off truma from the average produce. They don't take it off from the best or the worst, they take it from the average. V'yaz aliyu, and then this agent went along. He went along. V'tar miyafos, he took off truma from the best of the property. Uvava labayis umitzo, and the owner of the field came and found him. V'yamar leklach etzel yafos, and he said, take from the best. Im nimtzu yafos mehen truma, so truma. If we find that he took from the best, it's a good truma. V'im lav ein truma, so truma. And if not, it's not a good truma. And this has nothing to do with yish shalom midas, because it's not a case of shalom midas. It's a case where he actually was appointed as a shliach. And Rashi explains, lo hava yada, again, the Gemara's proof was from the fact that at the time he was separating the truma, the owner didn't know. Alma, we see, kevan de lechi yada denichale, since when he does know it was something that was pleasing to the Baal HaBayis and he agreed to it, to the Baal HaSada, amrinan meikaranami nichale, so we say, just like he agreed to it when he found out, he also would have agreed to it from the beginning, ulin yish nami, and therefore we apply the same thing to yish. Kevan de lechi yada miyash, since when he would find out about it, he would despair. Meikaranami have a yish, so also from the very beginning, we consider it to be despair. And Rashi continues, Atem gam atem, kain torimu gam atem. This is a pasuk by Truma. It says, you take off Truma, also you. Mehacha nafkal and shluchus shaladim kemoso l'Truma. It's from here that we learn out the concept of shlichus by Truma. There's a concept of agency by Truma. Shashliach shataram Truma. So Truma, that if a shliach takes off Truma, that's considered to be a good Truma. V'kevan the shlichus mehacha nafkal. The point of the Gemara is, since we learn out shlichus from here, mehacha nafkal, and we learn it out from here, al karchach shluchachem dumya de atem bo'inan. So the shliach has to be similar to you. It has to be l'daitchem, af shluchachem l'daitchem. It has to be with your knowledge. Shahabayla minuhu shliach. The point is that the owners have to actually appoint the person as a shliach. And the Gemara continues, Ameimar u Marzutra v'Ravashi iklu levustana de Mari bar Isuk. Ameimar and Marzutra and Ravashi, they went to the orchard of Mari bar Isuk. Isi Arise, the sharecropper of Mari bar Isuk, he brought to them tamri v'rimoni, he brought dates and pomegranates v'shada kamayu, he placed it before them. Ameimar v'Ravashi achli, Ameimar and Ravashi, they ate from these fruits. Marzutra lo achel, Marzutra wouldn't eat from the fruits. The idea was he was concerned that maybe the owner really doesn't want to give these fruits. Adahachi asa Mari bar Isuk. In the meantime, Mari bar Isuk came, Ashkechinu, he found them. V'yamar leila arisi, and he said to his sharecropper, Amailo isis lula rabbanan mehanach shapirta, why didn't you bring the rabbanan from the very best? Amrulei Ameimar v'Ravashi leMarzutra. So Ameimar and Ravashi said to Marzutra, Hashta Amailo achal mar. So now why doesn't the master eat? Now already you know that the owner agrees, so why don't you eat from the fruits? V'atanya, didn't we learn the brisa that we just quoted above? Im nimtzu yafos mehen, if you find that he actually separated the truma from the best as the owner wanted, truma, so truma, then the truma is good. So too over here, it seems that the owner is in agreement, and therefore there's no problem to eat from these fruits. Amar Lahu, he said back to them, Hachi Amar Rava, this is what Rava says, Lo Amru Klachetz al Yafas, Ela L'inyan Truma Bilvad. The rule of Klachetz al Yafas, that if we find out the owner agrees, then we say it's effective, that's only true by Truma, Mishum de Mitzvah, because that's a mitzvah, V'nichale, so therefore we know that it is something that's pleasing to the owner. Aval Hacha, but over here, Mishum Ksifusu, maybe it's just out of embarrassment to Yamar Hachi that he's saying that, meaning he doesn't want to look like he's not a good host, but really maybe he doesn't actually want to share the fruits with us, and that's why I'm refraining from eating. And the Gemara continues, Tashma, coming here, the following proof from a brisa. Odeyu hatal alein, if the tal that's talking about the dew is still on them, this is talking about the halacha that in order for food to be makabel tuma, it has to be touched by one of the zayin mashkin, one of the 7 liquids, so to speak. Water is one of those liquids. Tal would count as one of those liquids. And so the issue is as follows. Let's say you have a situation where the tal came down, and if the fruits are still moist, v'samach, and the person is happy about that, the owner is happy that the dew is there, hareze b'chiyutan, that counts as b'chiyutan, and it is now huchsher, it is now prepared to be makabel tumah because it's touched one of the liquids. It's specifically when the fruit is detached from the ground that it has to touch this liquid, and then it is considered to be prepared to be makabel tumah because the owner is happy about what happened. But nagvu, let's say the tal, let's say the dew already dried, afal bisha samach, so then even though he is happy with the fact that it got wet, and Rashi explains, Odeo atal alein, if the dew is still on them, hamala peiros of lagag, the case specifically here is that a person brought his fruits up to the roof. V'yard alein atal, the dew came down and came onto the fruits. V'samach betal sheyard alein, he was happy about the tal. Hareza b'chiyutan, that counts as b'chiyutan, v'huchshru l'tumah me'ata v'yadolam, it's now prepared, these fruits are now prepared to be makabel tumah. If they touch something tummy, they're going to become tummy. But nagvu at shalom etzam, but let's say they dried by the time he found them. Afal bisha samach achshav betal sheyard alein, even though he's happy now about the fact that the dew fell down on them, and we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Chof Beis Amud Beis.